Thank you for joining us on This Is Exclusive. You're watching the 6 p.m. headlines. I'm Niranjan. We're broadcasting live from the Republic Kannada newsrooms in Bengaluru. Here are the headlines at 6 p.m. this evening. In a cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister tells ministers counter-attack on Sanatan strongly, instructs his ministers to defend Sanatan.
नहीं है तो उनका प्रॉब्लम है, मेरा प्रॉब्लम नहीं है. मेरा धर्म तो संविधान है. I don't see it to be mine.
Despite a massive backlash, the Congress president's son and ally DMK refusing to apologize for the Sanatan insult. Anger mounts across India over the insult to Sanatan Dharma Hindus. Hindu leaders demanding apology from the Congress and the DMK. After G20 invite badges of the global event mentions Bharat instead of India, Congress objects to the use of the word Bharat.
No, India, that is Bharat. It is there in the constitution.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar giving it back to the Congress party, saying the Bharat term, the word, the phrase, the idea, the nation is mentioned in our constitution. Meeting on One Nation, One Election held at former President Ramnath Kovind's residence. Amit Shah, Arjun Ram Meghwal in attendance.
Days to go for the G20 Leaders Summit. In fact, the heads of state and government are already streaming into New Delhi. It's going to be a big diplomatic powwow for the next 2 days. And joining us, High Commissioner of the United Kingdom to New Delhi, Alex Ellis. Very good evening, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for the interview. And let's begin by asking you, what are the expectations of the United Kingdom from the Leaders Summit that's taking place on September 9 and 10? What's the UK view on how things have panned out till now, insofar as G20 presidency of India is concerned?
Sure, the G20 presidency,
Sure, the G20 presidency, India's G20 presidency has been a big deal, and the summit is going to be a big deal. It's a tough job for India because you have quite a fractured world, partly driven by Russia's invasion of Ukraine and an autocracy trying to take over a democracy. At the same time as there are big global issues to wrestle with, and Prime Minister Modi has been quite right to emphasize those big global issues, whether you're dealing with food security or energy transitions or climate resilient, disaster resilient infrastructure. All these things, they matter a lot. So our expectations are high because the India presidency's ambition is high, and rightly so. But it's going to be tough because of that fractured world at the same time as you have these big challenges.
Right, and for the first time, the would be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom coming to India for the first time with a thought of having some kind of consensus which has been missing in the last few ministerials, for example, during India's presidency.
I think Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will come here with his wife Akshata Murthy. They will come. I think Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will come here with his wife Akshata Murthy. They will come to support the Indian presidency in its ambition and its attempt to try and find a resolution. I think our Prime Minister will be focused on global growth,
India is a welcome pole of growth in an otherwise not great global growth scenario, but that will affect India as well. Secondly, he'll want to address the issues of the global south, food security, energy security and so forth, sustainability. And thirdly, he will want to point out the consequences of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, not just the terrible damage it's doing to the people and the country of Ukraine, but also the wider damage it's doing, for example, by choking the supply of grains to the world, thereby pushing up food prices, including in Haryana or in or UP, and also restricting the supply of grain to the poorest countries in the world. In other words, those global issues we talked about are being badly affected by what Russia is doing in Ukraine.
One would say, since you mentioned President Putin not coming, is perhaps because Russians thought that despite the fact that G20 is actually a geo-economic grouping, there is a lot of geopolitics in it of late. And perhaps the Russians thought that an attempt would be made to embarrass them, to corner them, and that's why he is not coming. And then that's the reason why perhaps the difficulty in getting a joint communique.
I think President Putin or the Russians will speak for who will represent them.
I think President Putin or the Russians will speak for who will represent them. I suspect President Putin can't leave the country because he can't leave the country. He couldn't make it to South Africa a couple of weeks ago. But I think it's impossible to de-link geopolitics from geoeconomics, because these big issues, like the energy transition, like food security, they are all being harmed by what's going on from Russia and Ukraine. And so it's unfortunate you can't make that distinction anymore. We need to focus on the big problems of the South. We totally agree with the Indian presidency on that. We've been supporting the Indian presidency every step to try and get the focus on that. You know, talking about climate change, as we were down in Chennai not so long ago, talking about the energy transition in Goa. By the way, one of the great things about the G20 presidency has been going to all these different venues, and our ministers, we've had 16 ministers here, seeing all the different parts of India. But in the end, it's the geopolitics in part which is causing harm to the geoeconomics.
Right. One more question. Coming foreign minister would be representing President Putin. Similarly, Chinese President Xi Jinping is not coming. You think that's going to influence the quality of the communique that's going to come out, or the New Delhi declaration that's going to come out?
I've seen the Indian government saying it's very
to come out, or the New Delhi declaration that's going to come out.
I think I've seen the Indian government saying it's very rare that you actually get all of the leaders together in one room, and almost all of them will be there. Our Prime Minister will be there, leaders from all over the world, and India, of course, has invited some guests. I think there are 43 organizations in total, so I think there will be a lot of power and a lot of dynamism in the room. Of course, China will be represented by its premier, I think. So no matter who's in the room, we've got to try and find and build consensus about some of the big challenges we face, whether it's on the economic side, whether it's on the developmental side. And that's what we need to do, and we'll be supporting Prime Minister Modi. So I think our Prime Minister will be there exactly to try and get some consensus.
The missing Russians and the missing Chinese, again, the president. President Biden said he was hoping to meet President Xi Jinping, but he's not coming. And today we have had those words coming in from the United States, I believe from the National Security Advisor, that if China chooses to be a spoiler, so be it, we'll try to work things out. You get a sense that, in some sense, this absence is a bit of a spoiler.
the world can't afford.
In some sense, this absence is a bit of a spoiler.
The world can't afford spoilers at the moment. If we look how far off track we are from the Sustainable Development Goals, for example, that's something we need to come together to try and solve. I think we saw that determination 2 years ago in the Glasgow Climate Change Summit, hosted by the UK, but where Prime Minister Modi's intervention was crucial in driving a consensus which was ambitious. I heard Prime Minister Modi's ambition when I was at the Red Fort listening to his speech on the 15th of August. And that's the ambition we need, and that's why I think Prime Minister Sunak will come behind. So whoever's in the room, we've got to try and aim high and go for ambition.
Right. So Prime Minister, when we entered presidency, do you see things have moved in that direction where India has been able to impact some of the global agenda through G20?
Yeah, I'd say two things about the Indian
some of the global agenda through G20?
Yeah, I'd say two things about the India's G20 presidency. Firstly, the tone and texture of a G20 presidency is going to change as a result of India's. And I saw somebody use that phrase the other day, and I agree with it. India's broken the mold on G20 presidencies. New presidencies will have to do things in a different way because of the way India's managed to spread the presidency all over the country and reach so many people. Secondly, on the substance, India has gone for ambition, and they're right to. And they've set pathways, for example, on deforestation. They've set pathways on how you can use digital infrastructure in order to encourage development. They've gone for high ambition on food security, where they are supporting a drive for greater health security as well. So actually, India has really driven an agenda which is about reaching all of the people in the world, which is what the G20 should do, because it represents, whether it's in GDP or population, a very large part of the world. It is not a sort of formal decision-taking body, but it gives the political ambition and the energy behind what we need to do. So we'll see over the next days, but also consequent to India's G20 presidency, whether this ambition, which we support, can be followed through in all the different bodies, whether that's the World Bank or the UN or you name it. But I think India is right to be ambitious.
Because I think India really upped its game. But then there are some issues with the climate finance part of it. You think some modus vivendi could be found and could be reflected in the joint communique?
What I can say is that the UK has actually, walked the talk. We actually provided the money which we said we were going to. I think as overall the world, in terms of the $100 billion per year, is actually pretty much there on that. But what really matters is how do you unlock the private capital flows? That's one of the reasons, by the way, we're doing the free trade agreement, because that's the way you're going to make the big transformation. It's private capital which is really changing the way in which we can do the energy transition. Now, India will be one of the three determinant countries of the rest of my life, alongside the United States and China, in terms of what happens to the world. And India's energy transition, as it does its great growth leap over the next 20 years, will be fundamental to how the world works. That's why we're so supportive of what India's trying to do in terms of the growth of renewables, in terms of the research in hydrogen, for example. And our companies are into this in a big way. For example, BP and Shell, they are part of that energy transition in India, including through electric vehicles and also green hydrogen. So in the end, to turn the climate change ambition into reality, needs some public money, for sure. It needs some public agreements, like free trade agreements, but it also needs the private capital to come in.
All right. I believe it would be a bilateral component where Prime Minister would be having a meeting with Prime Minister Modi as well. If you could just give some idea of what's the bilateral agenda looks like.
Sure. We have a big bilateral agenda. It's a very ambitious...
What's the bilateral agenda looks like?
Sure. We have a big bilateral agenda. It's a very ambitious one. It's about looking forward. The start of that is a free trade agreement. We've got a long way in those negotiations. We've closed the large majority of the chapters. Now we're into some tough stuff at the end, and that's hard work, and it will take hard work. So I'm sure that Prime Minister Modi and Prime Minister Sunak will want to show each other that political will to try and make things happen. If that is there, I'm sure the technicians, people like me, can turn that into reality. We need to grow our defense and security partnership. We have a much better relationship than we did between the armed forces, especially in the Indo-Pacific, where we have a shared aim of achieving a free and open Indo-Pacific. These things are linked. A free trade agreement is beneficial economically for jobs in India, jobs in the UK, but it's also a signal that the fifth and sixth biggest economies in the world, both of whom are democracies, are determined to grow together. And then we need to look at sustainability, as we talked about before, and health. In other words, it's a big agenda. I suspect the free trade agreement will be at the top of it.
Is the UK side...
The prime ministers of many different countries, they're never quite satisfied that things are moving fast enough. So I think
ministers of many different countries, they're never quite satisfied that things are moving fast enough. So I think that we've actually got, the pace has accelerated a lot in the last couple of months on both sides, and now we need to keep that going.
Perhaps would be interested in
going through the coming weeks.
As well, you think the UK would be prepared?
Sure. One other element of our relationship is the extraordinary living bridge, as Prime Minister Modi calls it.
Sure. One other element of our relationship is the extraordinary living bridge, as Prime Minister Modi calls it. India tops all of our main visa categories. 140,000 student visas issued from June to June. That's more than China for the first time, I think, in a very long time. Over 500,000 visit visas, over 50,000 skilled work visas. So actually, the UK and India's flow of people is a great thing, which leads ultimately to the arrival in number 10 Downing Street of a man called Rishi Sunak, who lights the on Diwali. And actually, one of his first acts after he became Prime Minister was to have a Diwali party. There's a flip side to that. You'll have some people who the Indian government would like to return to the UK. those particular issues are issues before courts. The government has taken all the action it can take, basically, and now the courts have to decide.
All right. So in Indian tradition, son-in-law is a very important person.
Indeed.
And since you have been learning a lot of Hindi through Bollywood, there is a Bollywood song, Sasural Genda Phool. Perhaps you would be talking to the Prime Minister about that.
I better learn that one first, I think.
It's up talking to the Prime Minister about that.
I better learn that one first, I think. Don't forget, though, it's our Prime Minister, but remember the UK as a whole. For example, when we had the coronation of King Charles in May of this year, for the first time in the coronation, you had regalia and objects from the Hindu faith and from other faiths as well as part of that ceremony. And that shows it's a very, I should say the regalia were brought by members of our parliament, of the House of Lords of different faiths. And that tells you something about the modern UK. And I think that's a great country to represent, and also one which should be engaging with the modern, the new India as well.
Thank you so much.
So the UK High Commissioner to India speaking to my colleague and senior executive editor Abhishek Kapoor about India's G20. On that note, we'll take a short break here on Republic TV. We'll come back and play some more excerpts of that big interview as we run up to that big G20 event in the national capital. The entire world will be watching what happens in New Delhi. The biggest voices, as always, will be on Republic TV. Stay tuned, taking a short break.
Amity has been ranked India's #1 private university for the 11th year by India Today, a testimony to Amity's world-class education whilst imbibing values and sanskars in students.
Nobody can ever trouble an honest journalist. Nobody can ever trouble an honest media house. We are destined for success. Every moment from now on, I want everyone in the Digvijay newsroom to always remember that you must be wedded to the cause of news. Thank you very much, Anand, for having us here and for letting us take the journey forward.
2017 Republic TV. (2019) Republic Bharat. (2021) Republic Bangla. (2023) Republic Kannada, coming soon on India's largest news network.
People of this country know that whichever language we go to, we are speaking for the people 24/7. We are truly the voice of the people. Today we dedicate Republic Kannada to the people of Karnataka. I am totally confident that the people of Karnataka will welcome us and accept us, give us their blessings in this journey.
Nobody can ever trouble an honest journalist. Nobody can ever trouble an honest media house. We are destined for success. Every moment from now on, I want everyone in the Digvijay newsroom to always remember that you must be wedded to the cause of news. Thank you very much, Anand, for having us here and for letting us take the journey forward.
Welcome back. In the last few days, there have been some comments about Hinduism, about Sanatan Dharma from different political leaders. From the DMK, where Udayanidhi Stalin made a comment, he won't apologize, he won't take it back. In fact, he's making it worse. And then you have that comment coming in from Priyank Kharge, a minister in Karnataka, and more ministers. In fact, a Congress leader and a home minister in Karnataka, G. Parameshwar, also questioned the origins of Hinduism in a comment made on Tuesday. Now, as these comments become almost a pattern ahead of the elections, perhaps in 2024, the Prime Minister, speaking to his party, to his ministers, has sent out a message saying that such comments should be countered strongly by his ministers.
Anybody can actually say, democratically about anything, but they have to keep everybody's sentiments in check as well. But if you are going to issue a death threat to anybody who says anything, what's the difference between you and other radicals? You are proving them right. Just because somebody said something and you are going to issue a death threat of and put a bounty on their head of 10 crore, how different are you from the other radicals? Doesn't your religion teach mercy? Doesn't it teach equality?
இவற்றை நாம் ஒழிக்கத்தான் வேண்டும், எதிர்க்க முடியாது. கொசு, டெங்கு காய்ச்சல், மலேரியா, கொரோனா இதையெல்லாம் நம்ம எதிர்க்க கூடாது, ஒழித்து கட்ட வேண்டும். அப்படிதான் இந்த சனாதனம். சனாதனம் என்பதை எதிர்ப்பதை விட ஒழிப்பதே நாம் செய்ய வேண்டிய முதல் காரியமாகும்.
And the BJP has taken the Prime Minister's cue, and they have been responding in the last 2 days, but many more responses coming in today with the Assam Chief Minister leading that attack. Listen in.
Do you think that the Gandhi Parivar-led Congress party appears to be so very uncomfortable with what one would say a continuum of our civilization?
You see, that Gandhi family is a very, very typical family. It is very, it needs a whole research team to see what they are actually. They will say that they are Kashmiri Brahmin. And before Madhya Pradesh election, they will go to temple. Before Rajasthan election, they will go to temple. But the next day, they will encourage their own party president Mallikarjun Kharge to say that Sanatan is bad. His son will be encouraged to say that annihilate Sanatan. Then the next day, Karti Chidambaram will be encouraged to say that annihilate Sanatan. Next day, Mr. Venugopal will be encouraged to say that whatever Udayanidhi Stalin's statement, that's reflection of his freedom of speech. Now, I'll ask them, if I issue a statement that because Islam has something which is not very, very kind to women, that is why you annihilate Islam. Will Congress will be kind to me? If I say that Christianity sometimes promote certain things which may not be pure Bharatiya, so that is why denounce Christianity, will Congress party will spare me? No. So, for BJP, for us, we will not denounce Hinduism, we will not denounce Islam, we will not denounce Christianity, because these are religion, and you can have your views on religion, but you cannot say annihilate Islam, annihilate Christian, annihilate Hinduism. Now, when it is said against Hindu, they will justify it. But if they say against the same thing against Islam and Christian, they will say, look, he should be booked, cases should be filed, he is communal, he is going to divide this country, BJP is like that. So that's the psychology of Rahul Gandhi and the Gandhi family. Anything Hindu, it is fine. Anything against Hindu, justifiable. Anything against Bharat, justifiable. But don't say anything against, don't say anything against.
Taking a short break on This is Exclusive at 6 p.m. When we come back, that special broadcast on India's preparation for G20. We have a few exclusive interviews on the show this evening coming up next. Stay tuned. Preparations for G20, that interview with the British High Commissioner coming up next.
Nobody can ever trouble an honest journalist. Nobody can ever trouble an honest media house. We are destined for success. Every moment from now on, I want everyone in the Digvijay newsroom to always remember that you must be wedded to the cause of news. Thank you very much, Anand, for having us here and for letting us take the journey forward.
2017 Republic TV. (2019) Republic Bharat. (2021) Republic Bangla. (2023) Republic Kannada, coming soon on India's largest news network.
People of this country know that whichever language we go to, we are speaking for the people 24/7. We are truly the voice of the people. Today we dedicate Republic Kannada to the people of Karnataka. I am totally confident that the people of Karnataka will welcome us and accept us, give us their blessings in this journey.
Nobody can ever trouble an honest journalist. Nobody can ever trouble an honest media house. We are destined for success. Every moment from now on, I want everyone in the Digvijay newsroom to always remember that you must be wedded to the cause of news. Thank you very much, Anand, for having us here and for letting us take the journey forward.
2017 Republic TV. (2019) Republic Bharat. (2021) Republic Bangla.
Good evening to all our viewers. As it is the live coverage ahead of the G20 summit. Delhi is bracing for the big event on the 9th and 10th of September. But as you slowly get the feel of how the big event is turning out, yes, preparations that are on in full swing, and most importantly, how we are going to be welcoming the world leaders in the national capital to give them a taste and essence of what the diverse Indian culture is all about. This is exactly a little away from the Bharat Mandapam, where you will be witnessing the big event that is planned across more than 100 acres, developed at a cost of more than 2,700 crore rupees, and slowly the security apparatus, how the routes have been managed and how these delegations will be placed in the national capital, all of that is underway. We will talk about it in the next half an hour. First, a quick check of the headlines. I'm Suesha Saul. Marks women and Special Commissioner of Police rank officers part of the foolproof security arrangements that have been put in place by the Delhi police. Yes, the grand preparations that are on in full swing, and how India took the G20 presidency in a very difficult time. But the whole idea is to give a grand, expansive experience to all the world leaders and the huge delegations that will be visiting through this global event. Of course, the primary discussion is around the global